Good morning. Today I'm going to talk about Toni Morrison, an eminent women writer of America, and her novel, The Bluest Eye. Before I begin telling you about Toni Morrison and her novel, The Bluest Eye, I would like to tell you something about the emergence of African American literature. Now, the literature written by the Africans settled in America is known by many terms like Negro literature, Black American literature, Afro-American literature. Now the term which is generally used is African American literature. Now this literature means the literature written by the blacks, the Africans settled in America, emerged due to a strong desire or a strong urge for freedom, equality, and, of course, an urge for expression. As we all know, that the Africans first were imported or were brought from Africa to work on the farms in the south, in the region, the south of America. Now they were bought, not only brought, but they were bought for slavery. Now, after some years, they began to feel that they should be treated not like slaves, but as people, honorable, or you can say people residing in America. And they raised their voice against discrimination between the blacks and the whites. So, it was a voice raised against oppression, racism, and discrimination. And the victims were, as we all know, they were the blacks. So, when they began to express their annoyance or their dissatisfaction for being treated in a different way, they began to write some articles, some literary write-ups to voice their feelings. Now, Phyllis Wheatley was the first American poet who tried to express his feelings through his poems. But people did not appreciate this kind of literature or the poems written by him. He did not get any recognition. But after some years, when more and more people tried to express their agitation or their feelings against the kind of treatment that was given to them, it was realized in America that their expression for freedom was meaningful. And the blacks or the black people or the Negroes, they were successful in producing a literature not only rich in content, but rich in variety also. Now, the literature produced by them speaks of their experiences, which were full of pain and struggle for identity. This form of literature began, if we try to look at the history, we can see that this kind of literature began with the oral tradition. And it was for the sake of giving some kind of comfort to the black community, and these were in forms of spirituals, ballads, sermons, and folk tales. And the object of all these was to cheer up the depressed and dejected community. Now, second stage of its development was its written form, including poems by Wheatley, Phyllis Wheatley to be exact, and various slave narratives, written either by the slaves or their masters, who had, and the masters were white people, but they had sympathy for these black people. Another major event that tried to give, or that caused a kind of speeding up of the production of literature by the blacks was the Harlem Event, or the Harlem Renaissance, we can call it. Now, many black people, as they were suffering from depression, or you can say the deteriorating economic condition, they tried to leave the southern region and they tried to move towards the northern region, which was being industrialized, and they had a hope that they would certainly get some work there. And the city they chose, or the region they chose, was that of Harlem near New York. Now, when this migration took place, now in the period of, say, between 1914 and 1918, many rural Americans, they just tried to shift to the north, in the search of some employment opportunities. Now, among many new mass congregations in American industrial cities was Harlem. New York City, a convergence of African Americans from all over the country. Now, instead of using the direct political means, African American artists, writers, and musicians employed culture to work for goals of civil rights and equality. There were some anthologies published, new Negro movements started, and the new African American works published by philosopher Alain Locke in 1925. So we can say that this shift or this migration or this collection of the Negroes at Harlem did affect the emergence of great bulk of literature, not only literature, but the other forms of art, in America. And it was such that even if the whites wanted to ignore it, they could not. Now, other than this, many social changes were taking place, and these led to the obtaining of many civil rights by the blacks. And this really brought about a great change in the literary scene of America. Now, another noticeable, or you can say conspicuous, fact that draws our attention is that not only men, but many women joined the foray of writers. They were interested, those who got the opportunity of being educated, they were interested in producing some literary works so that they can draw the attention not only of Americans, but the people all over the world about or towards the condition of the blacks. Not only the attention was drawn of other people, but they wanted to teach the blacks to indulge in activities of their own, establishing their own identity. They tried to describe or portray, I should say, portray the picture of reality as far as the blacks were concerned. And of course, many movements and activities by people like Junior Martin Luther King and others, they did try to motivate the blacks to have some kind of confidence and to rise above the complex they were suffering from. Now, when we talk about the women writers, the name which attracts attention is that of Toni Morrison. She was among the women writers like Toni Cade Bambara, June Jordan, Audre Lorde, and Alice Walker. The concern of these writers was to explore racism in women's movement and sexism in the Black Power movement. Slogans like Black Power changed into slogans like Black is beautiful. Now, the only aim was not to suffer from any kind of complex just because their skin was black. Now, the writers tried to instill confidence among the black people who were not looked upon with great respect by the white community. Now, Toni Morrison, when we talk about Toni Morrison, we should know that she was educated and she was an American author, editor, and professor who won the 1993 Nobel Prize in Literature for being an author in novels characterized by visionary force and poetic import, gives life to an essential aspect of American reality. She was the person who raised her voice against racism, oppression, incest, and the conditions prevailing in American society, especially that part of American society which was constituted of the blacks or the Africans. Now, her novels are known for their epic themes, vivid dialogue, and richly detailed African American characters. Among the best known of her novels are The Bluest Eye, The Song of Solomon, Tar Baby, Beloved, Jazz, Sula. But first of all, she wrote The Bluest Eye, which came out in the year 1970. Now, Toni Morrison was a person who tried to be very candid, very frank, and honest. When someone asked her, why did she write such kinds of novels, she said, I read many books, many novels written by others, but in them I could not find myself, and therefore I wanted to be there in the novels. Therefore, we find that she had some kind of feeling that being a woman, she should write for women, and she should write not only for women, but she should unveil and express and portray the plight of women. So the condition, she wanted to wake up the women, especially the black women. So the themes are about women. Here we find a woman writer writing about the women and especially the black women. Now, The Bluest Eye, her first novel, is a story about the heroine Piccola, who is a girl of about 11 years, and she is very poor. Now, she belongs to the family of the Breedloves, and a father, Charlie Breadleaf, he's a drunkard. Now, he tries to rape his own daughter when he's not in his senses, being drunk, and he tries to rape her not only once but twice. And then he flies. Flies means he leaves the home or the house, and they just live in the front portion of a storehouse. Now, the story is narrated by Claudia, the 9-year-old daughter of the McTeers. There are two sisters, Claudia and Freda. Now, they are also Africans or black, but they are not very poor, though of course they are better off than the Breedloves, but they also feel that there is a different kind of treatment given to the blacks in the American community, by the white American community. The story is told by Claudia. So, the narrator is Claudia, not only Claudia alone, but there is an omniscient narrator also. Toni Morrison keeps on changing her narrators, but the major part is narrated by Claudia. Now, a very striking fact or feature you can call about this novel is that the novel is divided into 4 parts or 4 sections, and each part is named after a season. First of all, we have autumn, then we have winter, and the third part is named spring, and the last part is named summer. So, though the novel is unfolded in stream of using consciousness technique, but even then, this stream of consciousness technique also does not remain same throughout the novel. So, she keeps on changing her style. And now, the story is about Piccola, of course, but Piccola is taken or included in the family of the McTeers as a foster child. Now, Claudia, Freda and Piccola, they just try to be friends, or they just develop a kind of sympathy or love and affection. But one thing about Piccola is very peculiar, that she is obsessed with the idea of getting the color of the eyes changed. Now, she has a strong desire of having blue eyes. The color should be blue because her concept of beauty is blue eyes. And she is ready to do anything to get the color of the eyes changed. Now, for that, she just goes towards the end, we find a character named Soap Church, and he tries to molest her, but she is willing to do anything. Now, the character of Soap Church, the character of Henry, who comes to live in the family of McTeers as a tenant, all these, they just try to hint at the nature of men, the way men take women to be granted, or you can say the way the men treat the young girls. Now, she wants to just portray or describe all these characteristics of men. How are the young girls often made victims of the lust of men. The incest, the sexism of mankind, or men, the race of men, is of course hinted at throughout this novel, The Bluest Eye. Now, there is another girl, Maureen Peel, who comes to their school, and she's a white girl, and she's a beautiful girl, and first she tries to laugh at these black girls, but gradually she becomes their friend, and when the boys try to taunt and just satirize or laugh at Piccola, Maureen comes to her rescue. So we find that there is sympathy in all human beings, and it surges, or it comes up it can come up at any time. Now we find that Piccola becomes pregnant, and this news spreads in the whole community. There are many people to talk about it, but there are very few who really worry about it. They are not there to help her or to do something about her. But these two girls, Claudia and Freda, they really pray for the baby to be born and to remain in this world. Many people just comment that the baby should die. But they just save money, and they try to plant marigold flowers, and they really want the marigold flowers to grow because they have a belief that if the flowers grow, then the baby will survive, and unfortunately the plant doesn't grow, and we find that the baby dies. Now, Piccola, she is mentally disturbed, and we find that she becomes mad, or you can say she loses the mental balance or the mental equilibrium. It is a tragic tale of a girl who suffers for no fault of hers. It is poverty, it is depravity, it is discrimination, it is the gap between the upper class, middle class, and the lower class that is responsible for the condition through which these girls, and especially Piccola, passes. Now we find that through this novel, the novelist tries to give a message that whether you are beautiful or you are not beautiful, whether you have fair complexion or you have dark complexion, you should not be complexed about it. Neither one should feel superior, nor one should feel inferior. So, the society, the social structure should be such where all are treated in an equal manner. Women should not be made to suffer because they are either black or fair. They are either rich or poor. They should be respected. They should be given their due place in society.